Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook. I'm here with my review of the latest episode of Star Wars Andor. It's the penultimate episode, as next week is the season finale. This one was called Daughter of Ferrix. And as it starts, we find Cassian clinging to a cliff face with a fellow escapee as Imperial ships fly overhead. So he's on that planet that he escaped to with the other guy and is apparently trying to make his way somewhere and had to, I don't think, climb the cliff. I think he was on the top of the cliff and they saw the ships coming, and so they like ditched over the side to keep from being spotted. And it was kind of tense because they were having trouble hanging on, but eventually the ships moved off, so that was good. On Ferrix, Cassian's mother has died, and her affairs are being handled by the Daughters of Ferrix, which I guess is some kind of civic group, as the family droid seems to mourn her loss, which was interesting. Meanwhile, Dedra and the Imperials plan to closely watch her funeral because they're waiting for Cassian to show up. Cassian and his friend, meanwhile, are captured by a couple of aliens, apparently called Narkinians, while trying to steal their ship to get off the planet. But they seem to talk their way out of it and gain passage on the ship to Niamos. We see that Bix is still being held and interrogated by the Empire, and that it's taking a heck of a toll on her. Vel, meanwhile, visits Luthen's shop looking for Luthen with news of Cassian's mother's death, which she gives to the assistant because Luthen isn't there. Then she visits Mon Mothma to find the daughter seemingly involved in some sort of group ritual activity surrounding seeking a husband. And she talks with Mon Mothma about her very dire financial situation. And Mon Mothma is very distraught over where she's at, and she's determined to find a way out of it, but it's very intense for her right now. Meanwhile, our Dedra-obsessed friend, Mr. Bean's Bonnet, gets a call from his former sergeant telling him about Cassian's mother's death. Cassian, meanwhile, retrieves his loot from the bathroom in that apartment on Niamos. Luthen is called to meet with the Forrest Whitaker character, whose name apparently is Saw, who suddenly wants to join the mission that Luthen asked him about before. But Luthen tells him he can't join the mission because, of course, he doesn't want to add anybody to it, knowing that it's doomed, which Saw figures out, causing him much dismay, until Luthen is able to explain to him that it's for the best that they sacrifice the people who are going on the mission rather than burn their contact in the ISB. Luthen then communicates in verbal code with his assistant from his ship about the latest goings-on in the shop, as it were, before being detained by an Imperial cruiser from which he manages to escape in a super badass way. And just, he takes out their tractor beam dish, and then he takes out a couple of TIE fighters. It was just cool. You got to see it. Cassian calls home and learns what happened to his mom, which, of course he's not happy about. And then he and his fellow escapee part company in case they're the only ones who made it out, so that they'll each have a better chance of staying under the radar and not getting caught than they would, if they were traveling as a duo, so that at least one of them can tell the galaxy what's been happening with the prison situation. And that's where the episode ended. So the critics of this show will say this is another episode where nothing happened. And in a way, that's true, because nothing grandiose happened, but a lot happened in this episode. We saw the ISB yet again tightening the noose on Cassian and the rebellion by manipulating the goings-on surrounding the funeral, because they need a permit to have the funeral, and they normally don't give permits, but Dedra says give them the permit, but limit their time and limit the size so that we can watch, so that they can have the funeral, but then we can watch it and at the same time control it so that it won't get, crazy, exploiting her death as a trap for Cassian. We see Luthen almost get caught, and it was a particularly chilling scene because, when they detain him, they ask for a code, and he gives a code, that I guess his computer generated so that it would seem legit, and the code does check out, but the guy in charge of the Empire ship says, let's board the ship anyway because we need the practice. So it's like they don't even care, and it's just another example of how they're not following any sense of decency or any sense of decorum about quote unquote law enforcement. They're just being despots. And to see Luthen evade them the way he did was pretty badass. It was pretty Mission Impossible, I thought. So, and it was a nail biter because, well, I mean, I suppose you're not going to get caught, but at the same time, it's a nail biter because you have to see exactly how he gets out of it, it was just pretty cool, I thought. And when watching the show, it's just impossible to escape a feeling of dread, a feeling of constantly having to look over your shoulder, and it's just a big nail biter. This whole show all the time, and I think it's fantastic. So just another great episode. It's visually stunning. They had some aliens in it this time, which were kind of funny the way they talked. And that's really all there is to say. That's a basic breakdown of the plot of this episode, and it's just more praise from me because I just find this show extremely engaging. And the other thing too, the conversation that Luthen has with Saw is very grim, where they're both talking about, hey, a bunch of guys are going to die, over 30 people, because we're protecting a source that pays greater dividends in terms of being able to continue to fight the Empire. And it's worth the sacrifice of these 30 people that are going on a doomed mission that we know is doomed, but we can't tell them is doomed. And it just, like I said, it lends itself to this feeling of how desperate things are and how grim things are. And it's just an incredible show. So I'm looking forward to the finale next week. I will, of course, be here after it's released to do a review. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.